This the D.O.C. We out here, we filming my video, me ATL, you know what I'm saying? Easy, N.W.A, everybody. The Ruthless, everybody. We out here filming my video, Beautiful but Deadly, and The Formula. We filmed The Formula yesterday, The Formula is hitting. Can't wait to get out.
When it comes to the golden era of hip-hop, the D.O.C stands out as one of the greatest lyricists of all time. His powerful delivery and poignant storytelling captivated audiences around the world, earning him respect and admiration of his peers. But despite his success, the D.O.C's journey was far from easy, and it all changed on one fateful November night. Tracy Lynn Curry was born on June 10, 1968, in Dallas, Texas. He went to the Kimball High School, and for the first 3 years, he was doing really well academically. But by the time 6th grade came around, D.O.C's grades started to go down, and he would eventually see himself starting to fail classes. Around the same time, his school started doing talent shows, which would let kids off classes for a couple of weeks. D.O.C wanted to take advantage of it, and decided to develop a new skill. The skill that he chose was rapping. But what started off as a way to get more free time and skip classes would later change his life forever. One of his earliest inspirations was Run DMC and their movie, Crush Group. After I saw that movie, I knew I can also do that. By the time he got to high school, he developed a way to skip school in which his parents wouldn't find out. Each time he skipped school, he made sure to learn a new word every day, just so when he gets home, he could use it in front of his parents to fool them into thinking that he learned something new in school. While it may seem like a funny way to get away with skipping classes, in the long run, it broadened his vocabulary and worked out in his favor. As a teenager, Curry began his career as a member of Fila Crew, a hip-hop trio that originated in Dallas, Texas. The group consisted of D.O.C, who at the time was known as Doc T, Fresh K, and Dr. Rock. Dr. Rock, at one point, was the DJ for the World Class Wrecking Crew, whose members were Dr. Dre and DJ Ella, who would later become pioneers of gangster rap. His association with Dre helped Fila Crew land the spot on the N.W.A and the Posse compilation album in 1987, when he invited Dre to perform at a nightclub in Texas, where the Fila Crew was also performing. He really liked what he saw, and Dre instantly took notice of D.O.C. D.O.C remembers Dre saying, "If you were in LA, we would make a lot of money together. You're dope." At the time, D.O.C was a little bit hesitant about moving to LA and continued to work with his crew. A year later, the group released an EP called The Toughest Man Alive. One of the EP's co-producers was Dr. Dre himself. The EP consisted of 8 tracks, 4 of which were previously released on the N.W.A and the Posse compilation album and written by D.O.C himself. Though the album would produce 3 singles, the group disbanded shortly after its release.
I call them a jerk, flip them off, but I'm not dissing them. I just hate to go to work.
With no group holding him back and his mother trying to send him to the army, D.O.C decided to give LA a shot. In 1988, he moved to LA and started to work with N.W.A and Ruthless Records.
Yo, everybody give me a little shout out. Let me know who you are. Ice Cube, the gangster.
Dr. Dre,
Laylaw.
DJ Speed.
D.O. to the C, MC Random, Ruthless Villain.
DJ Yellow.
And of course, my man right here, what's up?
Easy E, the hip-hop thugster.
D.O.C's lyrical abilities were quickly put to use, and in no time, he started writing songs for them. The film Straight Outta Compton does mention D.O.C, but I think they forgot to give him credit where credit's due. While there is no denying how talented and skillful Ice Cube was, and still is, D.O.C has contributed a lot to their most popular releases. He started out by working on N.W.A's debut album, Straight Outta Compton, on songs like Straight Outta Compton, F the Police, Gangsta Gangsta, and Parental Discretion is Advised, which would become some of the biggest songs on the West Coast and put N.W.A on the map.
Right about now, N.W.A quarters in full effect, Judge Dre residing.
Shortly thereafter, he also wrote for Eazy's debut studio album, Easy Does It, on songs like Still Talking, We Want Easy, and Easier Said and Done.
Otherwise known as a villain, because I'm ruthless, when I spot a sucker, I kill him.
He also changed his name to D.O.C by putting periods in between the letters, because as he said in an interview, "I was never really a part of the group, but I wanted people to know that I was associated with them." Although he was doing a lot of work behind the scenes, they would often ask him to step aside when taking pictures, which made him feel a little bit left out. According to him, after some time, it really started to bother him, but he understood that that's how the game works. After finishing writing music for albums that would later become multiple times platinum and revolutionize the rap scene, the same year D.O.C released his own solo debut, produced by Dr. Dre, called No One Can Do It Better. Idolizing East Coast acts such as Run DMC and Public Enemy, the D.O.C always showed more of a lyrical style, putting aside guns, drugs, and violence. Despite all of that, the album still received a parental advisory sticker because of the final track on the album, called the Grand Finale, featuring N.W.A.
Cause I'm the diggy doc and I would've been down with rock, but I was smart. The D.O.C knowing the formula.
The album was a great success, reaching #1 on the US top R&B/hip-hop album chart for 2 weeks, and peaking at top 20 on the Billboard 200. It spawned singles like Funky Enough,
I am not illiterate, no, not even a little bit. Nothing like an idiot. Get it? You want the record? Cool, I'm with it.
The Formula,
Nothing like what you've heard before and more, never less. See, I don't best. I mean, I'm like fresh, if not the freshest.
The Doc and the Doctor,
When I deliver something to shiver your peak level, and if you want it deeper, yo, go get a shovel, yo.
and Mind Blown.
Smooth, wordy example of how I'm living. I get in this prime, pumping records that'll blow your mind.
With one album alone, D.O.C managed to showcase his talent in a way that left all critics and music fans speechless, with AllMusic and The Source giving the album a 5-star rating and stating that no one can do it better, is an undeniable masterpiece. Only 3 months after its release, the album was certified gold and would eventually reach platinum status in 1994. But what seemed like a promising career in the making, with a limitless future, unfortunately, disaster was looming on the horizon. Only 5 months after the album's release, all the celebrations were cut short when D.O.C was involved in a near-fatal car crash. In November 1989, D.O.C was driving from a party when suddenly he fell asleep at the wheel, causing his car to swerve off the freeway and hit a tree. Curry, who was not wearing a seatbelt, was thrown out the window and slammed headfirst into it. When paramedics arrived, D.O.C was immediately taken into the emergency room. His injuries required 21 hours of plastic surgery and weeks of recovery in the hospital. When he woke up, the first thing that he noticed was that he couldn't talk. It took him more than a month to finally spit out a sentence, but once he heard it, he was shook. The accident had damaged his vocal cords, turning his once forceful voice into a tortured wheeze. Although I say the accident, D.O.C years later in an interview claimed that the change in his voice wasn't from the accident itself, but rather from the medics at the scene who were trying to establish a breathing tube. They pushed the tube down his throat, dislodging his vocal box and pushing it more to the right side, which made his voice sound completely different. The news about his voice was like a death sentence, and his dreams of becoming a rapper were gone in a split second. Shortly after the incident, when asked about on the news, he explained the situation and confessed to being intoxicated at the time on weed, alcohol, ecstasy, and cocaine. The most mind-blowing fact is that he got pulled over by the police the same night, but after cracking a couple of jokes and taking pictures with them, they eventually would let him go, and shortly thereafter, his life would be changed forever. It's hard to comprehend what went through his mind at the time, but as he said multiple times, it's probably everything. His depression was growing deeper and deeper each day, with him trying to wash all the pain away with drugs and alcohol. His friends reassured him that his days as a performer were over, but seeing him like that was heartbreaking. They encouraged him to get back into the music game by continuing to concentrate on the songwriting skills that he had, and for the next couple of decades, he continued to write music. He worked with N.W.A and Eazy-E before leaving them in 1991 and becoming one of the first members of Death Row Records, helping them to write a couple of hip-hop's most legendary albums like The Chronic and Doggy Style. He and Snoop grew to become a really close duo. I wanted to share my knowledge about the music with someone. I had a lot to give, but I couldn't do it by myself now because of my voice, and Snoop was the one willing to take in the information I could provide. His partnership with Death Row only lasted a couple of years, and in 1994, the D.O.C decided to call it quits after receiving no payment for his work of ghostwriting. Despite writing classic songs like Nothing But a G-Thang, Bitches Ain't Shit, and Real Mother G's, he still had that itch to release an album on his own. I never really felt apprehensive because of my voice, because after a while, I got used to it. So I figured it would only be a matter of time before everybody else got used to it. In 1996, 6 years after his debut album, the D.O.C attempted to make a comeback with an album, Helter Skelter. The album produced 2 singles with music videos, but was widely ignored and eventually failed to make any major noise. He gave one more shot in 2003 by releasing his 3rd album called Deuce, which was released on his own record label called Silverback Records. Although it was his album, D.O.C's presence on it was minimal. He only made a couple of appearances to introduce tracks or perform in skits such as My Prayer.
A whole state can help me find the voice I lack. The state is Texas, and they'll say D.O.C is back.
But despite the huge efforts, it was once again a flop. D.O.C's career was sadly cut short on that fateful November night. From coming up in the streets of Dallas, to writing the biggest and most influential songs in the hip-hop history, reshaping the sound, and becoming one of the most promising prospects on the West Coast with only one album alone, to getting all of it taken away in a blink of an eye. During his career, D.O.C only released 16 songs on his own, and unfortunately, left us all questioning how big would D.O.C have become if the crash never happened.